in and touch the sky. A star's light shines on long after it dies. Oh, in the night, I live every day as if it's your last. All memories been bright like beacons of the past. Oh, in the night, now we race against the sun. Now we race against the sun. That's what they're doing. Now we race against the sun. Now we race against the sun.
I am amazing. Love an extra set of hands.
But that's alright.
Oh my god!
Yo guys, what is up? Moxsy on a Borderlands 3 video, and today we're talking about Chaos Queen 2.0, personal favorite build of mine, and there's been so many new weapons, so many new changes. We got a lot to talk about today. Before we get into the video, guys, we are so close to 100k subscribers. You guys, I'm so happy that y'all are enjoying my videos, and you really have like changed my life just by watching these videos, so I appreciate you. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, consider it. Over 60% of my viewers are not subscribed, and we could possibly break 100k subscribers just by you clicking that button. So I do appreciate that, guys, and with that, let's get into the video. Alright guys, so showing on screen right now is the updated skill tree, and it's gonna look really weird. There's some things that we need to talk about immediately before you just jot down the skill tree, because I need you guys to understand some of these decisions, because they are very different than any other build because of how Mayhem scaling works right now. Now, the very first thing that we need to talk about is ties that bind. Ties that bind scales with your Mayhem level. At Mayhem 10, ties that bind is going to be doing about 7 times the amount of damage that you're going to do at an enemy that isn't bound by ties that bind. That means that if enemy A is in the middle of ties that bind, enemy B is linked, the damage that you're going to be doing to the linked enemy that you're not shooting at is about 7 times that damage, which is crazy. Now, do harm no longer scales ties that bind. Gearbox was worried about how crazy ties that bind was going to be when people were speccing do harm, and when people were speccing awakening, and when it was getting mayhem scaling. So we are not speccing into do harm, and we are not speccing into awakening, because action skill damage doesn't do anything for us anymore. Before, action skill damage was going to allow you to crush enemies. It doesn't anymore. This is by no means saying that ties that bind is underpowered or nerfed. In fact, it's almost the opposite. Ties that bind is stronger than it's ever been, and the amount of output and damage output that you can do with ties that bind is bananas. But you cannot increase that damage through do harm. Now, there are other things that do increase ties that bind's damage, but do harm is not one of them. So that is the very first thing that we needed to get out of the way. Now, we can talk about pretty much everything else now. So before we finish off the skill tree, I want to say that this is a kind of like do it all build. If you guys want to run the Guardian Takedown, if you guys want to run bossing, mobbing, whatever you want, you could do, and you can use genuinely any weapon on this build. Ties that bind is so strong right now that you could take a slight breeze and murder enemies with this build, but I will be sharing my recommendations for the absolute top weapons to use with this build, and I want to talk about the new ones first, and the changes. Now, the proprietary license is so good with this build. It is so freaking strong, and you guys are going to be looking for a consecutive hits anointment or 100 ASC on your proprietary license. Now, the license is very strong and different in that if you haven't seen my video, I covered up there, but some things that I didn't like super point out about this weapon is that, first of all, it's got all the properties of all the weapons in the game. So like it's burst like Doll, it's got stickies like Torg, it's got a shield like Hyperion, it's always elemental like Malon, and it ricochets like a Jacobs. So when you shoot body shots with this thing, you're going to get stickies. When you shoot headshots, it's going to ricochet. The ricocheting and all the stickies, especially with Ties That Bind and Indiscriminate, make this thing really, really strong for mobbing. Its single target isn't the best thing in the world. If you are going single target, you're probably going to be going for stickies, which means you're like going to be aiming for body shots instead of headshots. Just an FYI, because the stickies will do more damage for you. But when you're using ties, having a weapon that can ricochet as much as it already will with Indiscriminate, plus sharing all those stickies to enemies, it gets pretty crazy. Now, the Khaosan was nerfed. Since the last time I made Chaos Queen, the Khaosan was nerfed. It is still... I ran through every single SMG in this game with Amara. I went through literally every SMG, all the anointments, all the SMGs. The Khaosan is still one of the best. I do think that the license in mobbing situations is possibly a little bit better. But the Khaosan is still really strong. Now, the Khaosan suffers from really bad hipfire now. Its hipfire, pretty bad. However, we are Amara, and we are spec'd into Steady Hands, which is going to give us handling accuracy plus 31, and we're using Avatar with Transcend to give us plus 38% accuracy on the first cast and another 38 accuracy on the next, meaning that on this build we're going to have over 100% increased accuracy. So when you are actually, I can't do it right now because, but when you are phase grasping, the hip fire and the accuracy on the Khaosan returns pretty much back to what it normally was. So the Khaosan does work still very, very strong on this build, and part of the reason why I kept it the name Chaos Queen. Now, the next weapon that we need to talk about is the Complex Root. The Complex Root is so strong. If you haven't seen my video on this thing, it works maybe better with Indiscriminate than any other weapon in this game. If you haven't used this weapon with Ties That Bind or this build, you need to do it. Do yourself a favor, because the Root reprocs Indiscriminate like crazy, spawning whole brand new webs of damage, and makes the Guardian Takedown. This is probably the single best weapon for the Guardian Takedown, because it'll just nuke every enemy and all the bosses. Great for bossing, great for mobbing. You do have to be a little bit careful, but this build is really good with the Root because we're not using area of effect damage. As soon as you pop on area of effect damage, that'll increase the area that this thing explodes, and you will kill yourself. This build doesn't really kill yourself with the Root, which is awesome. And the last weapon that I wanted to bring up is the Reflex. Now, the Reflex works like the Recursion in that the more elements that you're going to be doing, the more chains that are going to happen. The Redundant Reflex got a crazy boost, or the Reflex. It got its damage increased by a ton. This weapon was disgusting on this build before. It is now even grosser. It single target is really good, and its mobbing potential is some of the best in the game, especially with this build, because you're going to be doing so many different elemental instances, that the Reflex is top tier. You're going to be looking for additional ASE next to mags on this thing, because like I said, like the Recursion, you're going to get more chains for the more elements, and you're going to get more chains per more pellets. So Redundant Reflex is the best thing here. Now, I know I've been talking about weapons for a little bit, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys understood that those are probably the weapons I recommend the most. The Bloom is awesome. The Gargoyle is awesome. The Beacon is awesome. The Light Show is awesome. The Quick Draw is awesome. The Flipper is awesome. The Hyper Focus is still strong. The Monarch is probably still one of the best weapons, if not the best weapon in the game. The Contain Blast is awesome. The Measure is awesome. This build does it all. Whatever you want to use, but I recommend, if you were to say, like, what are the 4 best weapons, I would recommend these weapons for this build. But genuinely, it does work with everything. Shields, still an old god. You're still going to be looking for bonus whatever. Elemental damage. Your grenade doesn't really matter. I'd still recommend Mitosis Hunter Seekers for pre-stacking the Pearl. Still using the Pearl. If you don't know what the Pearl does, DLC 2 class mod that is going to give us over 100% increased weapon damage when it is full stacked, and we're going to be stacking it very, very easily. Lastly, using a Phase Zerker. I've still got my OG Phase Zerker. Weapon damage, SMG damage, Malawan weapon accuracy. If you can get action skill damage on your Phase Zerker, you are going to be sitting so pretty. I have not been able to get it, but the god roll for a Phase Zerker is now action skill damage, because that is one of the only things that you can actually increase ties that bind damage with. So if you are lucky enough to get a Phase Zerker with action skill damage, hold on to it, cherish it, never let it go, because that is extremely strong. Fortunately, I haven't got one for you guys yet, so I'm still farming for one. Next up, let's talk about the build. Now, we didn't put any points into do harm. The reason I didn't put even a single point into do harm is because we're going to be dotting things so much that we're just going to be using Violent Tapestry to keep up our rush stacks, and because we're using a Phase Zerker, whenever I click my action skill, I'm at 25 rush stacks. So maintaining rush stacks isn't that important. So that's why we're just going Violent Tapestry to get down. And we're going fast hands, reload speed, weapon swap speed, mode swap speed. Pretty awesome. Alacrity, we're going 5 here. The amount of reload speed that you can get from this is crazy, especially with 25 rush stacks. Super, super awesome. Transcend for the accuracy and critical hit damage. No brainer. So +5 here in Restless isn't super needed. You could go to 3. You could take 2 points here and put them into Root to Rise so that you can get Blight Taggart if you'd like. I don't really need Corrosive. We're only walking 1 into Infusion. So I put the 5 into Restless because we're spamming our Ties That Bind as much as possible. Now we do need to talk about Indiscriminate, because Indiscriminate was also changed in this update. Indiscriminate does action skill damage and scales with your Mayhem level. Your Indiscriminate projectiles, instead of doing less damage, are going to be doing way, way, way more damage than your initial projectiles. Pair that with Ties That Bind, which is going to be linking damage, and then you're going to be getting bullets that are doing already 7 times damage. Or not 7 times damage. How Indiscriminate works is it double dips in everything that you're already doing. So think about all of your gun buffs is going to hit an enemy, right? Every one of your gun buffs and everything that you're doing to increase your damage is going to hit an enemy. That is going to do a certain amount of damage. That projectile is then going to ricochet to another enemy, and when it hits another enemy, it takes that original damage and it recalculates all of your gun damage bonuses. So it like double applies Tempest, for example, and that makes it freaking crazy. So we're always going to want to have Ties That Bind up because it is going to give us even more damage. Indiscriminate is what helps us melt so well in Ties That Bind in weapons that can pump out a lot of pellets very quickly. That will ricochet are going to be your best bet. Things with super high fire rate, like the License, like the Hyper Focus, like the Khaos, like the Bitch, like the Flipper, like the Monarch, are all really, really strong options to abuse Ties That Bind. We're put 3 into personal space. Bonus damage up close. It's not 12%, it's 18, so it's more than 36%. The rest here, from rest, fire rate, charge time. I put 2 points here when you use a Malawan weapon such as like the Root. All of our healing is based off of lifesteal, so when you have to take time to charge up a weapon, it can, if you're not careful, be deadly. So being able to shoot that off is really nice. Quicker, we're going to get some fire rate. Remnant for overkill damage. Remnant also action skill damage. Skills with splash damage is ridiculous with this build. And with the new scaling changes, Remnant is going to do hundreds of millions of damage for you, which allows you to maintain overkill. We got Laid Bare for V2 damage increase, Wrath for more gun damage, Avatar for more rush stacks. More rush stacks are going to give us more damage and cooldown with our Phase Zerker, so that is a must-have. You guys kind of know the rest of this. I'll just run through it really quickly, but Anima, Duration, Dot, Action Skill Dot, Tempest, Elemental Damage, Steady Hands, Handling, Accuracy, 1 point in Infusion for increased ricochets with the reflux or a recursion. It's going to give you another ricochet. Wildfire for spreading that dot chance. Tread for more gun damage. Deep well, magazine size, indiscriminate. Key, we do not need more than 3 points in sustainment. You could honestly get away with just 1 point in sustainment, but put 3 to be safe, and forceful expansion for more bonus elemental damage. Real quick, my modifiers are all really bad right now. The modifiers that I run are always Speed Demon. Speed Demon is almost always my easy modifier. For my hard modifier, I'll either run like not the face, critical hit damage reduced by 75%, because a lot of our damage is going through ties that bind and ricochets. Crit damage doesn't really matter to us. So while it's not the best thing, it's pretty fine. I'll run either not the face, roguelite, or buddy system, whichever you guys find the best. Roguelite, pretty great for about everything except for the Guardian Takedown. If you go down in the Guardian Takedown, which sometimes happens, no matter what you're doing, something will happen. You can no longer get up from it, so that kind of sucks. But Speed Demon is a must-have. I don't like being slow. You guys don't like being slow. And that is why I always rock Speed Demon. Guardian rank, just have everything if you can. Harmageddon works really well, increasing, basically giving us another slag-like increase on all of our dots. We're doing all of the elements. And guys, that is it for the build video. I hope you enjoyed. I'm sorry for taking longer. I hope you guys learned something new, and I hope you guys appreciate the video. If you did, be sure to drop a like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching, seriously, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Take care. Peace!